Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Design to Win. Today, I am just going to start this episode with a simple question for you. Have you ever looked back over your life and realized that there were people God placed there in your life at exactly the right time? I'm not talking about somebody He placed in your life for years or forever. I'm just talking about maybe for a season or for a reason. Maybe a woman who might have handed you a Bible, a teacher who believed in you, a parent who refused to let you give up or quit, a friend who called you when you needed encouragement, someone who just simply showed up when life hurt. As I was thinking about this question myself this week in this week's podcast, I realized my life has been very full of those people. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized they weren't just people. They were God's hand reaching into my life. Every one of them moved me forward in my life. You know, when I was 19 years old, I was really struggling. I had a lot of medical issues I was struggling with. And whether I want to admit it or not, I was dealing with an alcohol problem. I was just really lost at that time. And if I'm being really honest about it, I really didn't know God. I knew about Him. I went to church. I was raised in the church, but I really didn't have a personal relationship with God. And one day when I was working, I was driving a school bus at that time, believe it or not. But one day, a woman that I worked with did something that changed something in my life. She bought me a Bible. She bought me a study Bible. And not only did she buy me that Bible, but she took the time to help me to understand it. She mentored me and she encouraged me. And she kind of taught me how to spend time with God and begin to build a relationship with Him. Looking back on that now, I realize she wasn't just giving me a Bible. She was reaching back and helping me to move forward. God used her to change the direction of my life. As the years went by, there were so many others. My parents were always there for me, especially after my auto accident in 1994. Many of you may have heard my story. I've talked about it on one of my previous podcasts. That was the accident that left me as a paraplegic. Let me tell you, there are days I wasn't sure how I was going to rebuild a life after that. Days when everything felt so uncertain. But my parents kept on encouraging me. They were there for me. They kept believing in me when I struggled to believe in myself. And then there were the years later on, 6 years later, when my husband passed away. And then I became a single mom. And I made the decision to go back to college and finish my degree. Well, can I tell you something? That was a very hard time. One of the hardest times I'd ever had in my life. At least I thought at the time. I was raising my kids and working and trying to keep food on the table, trying to hold everything together. And during that final year that I had gone back to school and college and trying to maneuver through all these things, my dad passed away. I was truly brokenhearted. I was grieving and I was exhausted. And honestly, there were so many times I wanted to quit, but my mom wouldn't let me. I remember her being very worried because I was going to quit. I only had $700 that I owed for tuition in order for me to finish school and to graduate. And I didn't know what I was going to do. But my mom wound up paying that tuition for me. I did not actually know that until later on. I thought it was some of my teachers that had gotten together to help pay my tuition so I wouldn't quit, because I had so many of them trying to encourage me not to quit. But she believed in me more than I believed in myself at that time, and she went and she paid my tuition. And what she didn't realize at the time, God was using her in a very powerful way in my life. There have been so many mentors over the years, too. Some of the most recent mentors for me have been Terry Savelle Foy and Ryan Rieger, two people that I just have come to love and adore. They have done so much to help me in my life. God has used them to teach me so much about what it means to truly walk in His presence and to discover my purpose in life and to trust God in that and to just learn to stand in faith. And when I look back over my life now, I realize that every season had someone that God has placed there to help guide me through it. This made me think about my years as a teacher. For over 30 years, I taught art and special education. Thousands of students probably have crossed my path over the years. Some struggled academically and some struggled emotionally. Some struggled with learning differences and some just needed someone to believe in them. For instance, one young man comes to mind. He struggled in school. Academics were not easy for him just because he had a lot of adult life he was having to do, helping raise younger siblings and be very, very adult, just trying to manage going through high school. But I worked with him and encouraged him, and my oldest son worked with him and encouraged him. In fact, they became big friends. We just kept believing in him. And over the years, well, he graduated from high school and he went on to do amazing things. And for the last 6 years, he has been an engineer on a nuclear submarine for the United States Navy. Just think about that. You never know what God is doing in someone's life, and you never know what a word of encouragement can do. You never know what a word of encouragement can do, and you never know how one act of kindness can change a person's future. And then there's the student I talked about on my last episode, the young lady who left a hidden note behind in a picture frame. That note reminded me that the things we do matter, that loving people matters, that encouraging people matters. She has gone through challenges that most people can't imagine, yet through all of it, she continues to trust God. She continues to believe He has a purpose for her life. And honestly, she taught me as much as I ever taught her. She taught me perseverance. She taught me faith, whether she realizes it or not. And she taught me unconditional love. As I reflected on all these people, thinking about all this, I was reminded of a story in the Bible. There's a story in the Bible about this woman with an issue of blood. For years, she suffered with it. She had spent everything she had, and she was just clearly desperate to get healed and to be well. But she believed that if she could just touch the hem of Jesus' garment, she would be healed. And when she touched Him, Jesus stopped. He stopped in His tracks. Think about that. There were crowds pressing up against Him from every direction He was going. People were pushing and shoving Him, yet Jesus stopped and asked, "Who touched me and why?" He wanted to know. He wanted to know who it was that touched Him. He wanted her to know. This is what I believe. He stopped because Jesus wanted her to know that He saw her. He wanted her to know that she mattered. And he wanted her to know that she actually was healed, that power came over and she was healed. He wanted her to know she was no longer defined by her struggle. Oh my gosh, I can tell you, I love that story because it shows how attentive Jesus is. Think about that. And all those people around, he singled out that one person. He wanted her to know that he sees us, even in the crowd of people around us, even when nobody else notices, he notices us. And that brings me to one of the most powerful moments I can tell you that I remember even to this day in my life so far. It happened after my dad passed away. I was trying to be strong for my kids and trying to finish school, and already said I was working multiple jobs and just trying to keep everything together. And one night, after my children had gone to bed, I found myself all alone. I went into my closet, where I did quite often, and I cried. Trust me, this was not a very polite cry, and it was not a composed cry. It was a very broken cry. And even thinking about it right now, it tears me up. I was talking to God as I was bawling my eyes out, which I think some of you out there may be relating to that in some way. But I told God how much I felt alone and how much I missed my husband, how much I missed my dad. And then I said something to God. I said, God, you know what I need? I just need a hug. I remember saying, I just wish you would hug me so I know that you're here, so that I don't feel alone. I'm sure some of you out there know exactly what I'm talking about and have been there. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Well, the next morning, I went to church with my children. We walked into the sanctuary to sit down, and an older lady who I knew because she'd been in my parents' Sunday school class walked straight up to me. She looked at me and said, I know you need a hug. And she wrapped her arms around me and held me. Well, you can tell it still is emotional for me today. I lost it. I cried, just like I'm trying to keep from doing right now. But in that moment, something incredible happened. I felt God's presence. I felt a peace, His peace. I felt a comfort I had not felt in a very long time. And I felt very loved. It felt to me like God had wrapped His arms completely around me and held me tight. And in some strange way, I felt like my dad and my husband were there with God saying everything's going to be okay. That moment happened almost 20 years ago, and I still remember it, and it still touches my life so much. But God answered a prayer I hadn't even told another person about. He reached back and He helped me to move forward that day. And maybe today that's the message that someone out there needed to hear. Right now, you may feel alone and you may feel very forgotten. You may feel like nobody sees what you're carrying, but God sees. He always sees. And He often reaches out to us through other people. Just like I said at the beginning, through mentors or through our own parents, through a teacher, through a friend, through a student, or through a stranger at church. Sometimes He reaches out to us when we're reading a scripture in the Bible, or through a simple note from somebody, or through a hug. But it's funny, He always knows what we need. Well, as I wrap up this episode today, I want you to think about the people like I have, the people that God has placed in your life, the ones who have helped you to move forward, who reached back when you needed encouragement, and maybe even more importantly, who, if any, that God is calling you to reach back and help. Because I'm telling you, someone out there is waiting for the encouragement that you might carry, and someone is waiting for the wisdom that you may have learned through all of the things that you've been through. And someone is probably waiting for the hope that you can share to them. And just as God has used so many people in my life, He wants to use others in yours, and He wants you to be used for others. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and I know that there's somebody out there that has really needed to hear this word today. That's why God gave it to me and brought all those things to mind. So I want to thank you for joining me today on Design to Win. And I want you to remember that you are created for a purpose. You're created for a reason. And God is always, always working, even through the people He places in your path. So until next time, keep walking in faith, keep trusting His promises, and keep moving forward one step at a time. I love you. God bless you.